Welcome, everybody. This is the session on healthy environment, healthy people. This is one of the first sessions in this conference, one of the first... It's something here. Sorry for that noise. So, we are still waiting for one of the speakers, so that's why we were a bit delayed, but we hope that she will come very soon, but we will kick off the session anyway. My name is Irene Norstedt. I am the acting director for the People Directorate. People Directorate deals with both health and also with social and political sciences. And here we have, to my right side, Thomas Jackel, who is the Deputy Director General for the Austrian Ministry for Sustainability and Tourism. And to my left here, I have Marina Kusatana, I think I pronounced it correctly, who is a policy analyst in the Commission's Joint Research Centre. So the scope of this session is really to discuss the impacts of Horizon Europe in the way it should focus on how to ensure a healthy living and working environment. So what's really important in this session is that we keep the discussion, because the session is really for you to provide your input. It's not so much for us to talk here. It's really for you to put forward what you think, what impacts that we should achieve with this part of Horizon Europe. We don't want you to come with shopping lists. You should do research on this and that. Rather think more broadly, on a higher level, what are really the impacts that would be important for the citizens? To really feel that we are doing something for the European citizens. The session is also very timely because the President-elect, Ursula von der Leyen, has in her vision for the future actually put the environment and health as one of a really important issue. There's a lot of talk about the Green Deal, which is really, how do we save the planet? But we have another side of that, and that is how we are affected as humans by the environment and potential pollutants and everything, the air that we are breathing, the water we are drinking, and nature, of course. So this is a very timely session, and we really would like to have your input in what we should do to bring Europe forward in this important arena. So the session will last 1 hour. And I will first just give you a short resume of what... Okay, yeah, that should be better. So sorry for that, technical glitches in this first session. So I will just quickly go through just a little bit of the first outcomes of the open consultation. And I should also remind you that the open consultation on Horizon Europe is still open. It will be open until the 4th of October. So we would very much like to have your... Okay. So we take this off. Easier. So we take this microphone. Okay. So that is much better. So we really would like you to take the opportunity to provide your input if you have not already done that. You may be inspired by what you will hear and see and through the discussions over these days. So do take the opportunity, because we really would like to hear from you. Then we're supposed to have Veronica Manfredi here, who is director in DG Environment, but we haven't seen her yet. We're a bit worried that she's lost somewhere, but we hope that she will join us. But to my right, I'm lucky because I have Thomas, So he will talk a little about how to reduce chemical risks. Then we will kick off the discussion, and that is really for you to provide your input. And we will have one microphone turning, and we also have this little box here that we will throw at you. So that means that any of you can actually provide input when you get the box. So that's the idea of this, the box we can throw. And we would like to ask you to keep your interventions to very short, precise, to the point. So maximum 1 minute intervention, so that as many as possible of you will have the chance to provide your input. And then Marina here will try to summarize what we have discussed in this session, and that will of course be taken forward towards the conclusions of the whole event. So I already mentioned the public consultation. So here we're really looking for the impacts, as I mentioned. So we don't look for a shopping list of you should fund research in this area and you should do that. We're really looking for the impacts that we should try to achieve with the instruments we have at hand. So just coming through a little bit, summarize the input we have received already from the Horizon Europe consultation. So we have put forward this little paper that we asked your input on, and generally we see that there is a good agreement with the impacts that we have put out in this orientation paper. But there are some comments that we feel needs a bit further reflections. So these are some of the issues that maybe some of you have put forward. So how can we consider the limited resources of our planet and the one ecosystem that we share? How to turn evidence into action through behavioral changes and science policy dialogue, something really important. We think a lot of the solutions may be there. We may have technical solutions, we may have results already, but the question is, how do we actually put this into practice? How do we take them up? We all know we should stop using the car, we should walk more, we should do less of this, but do we really do that? How could we actually be better in that respect? Promote healthy lifestyles, also at work. Focus on prevention. Make urban areas healthy. Take into account exposures through lifetime. Optimize chemical risk assessment. Encourage substitution of hazardous chemicals. And improve communication of scientific evidence, uncertainties and risk, and make peer-reviewed studies useful for regulation. So, indeed, communication is a really important aspect, and some of you may have been to the opening session where you also heard the Commissioner talk about how we really need to get better in really communicating the results that we are delivering and to really tell society, what we do. I'm very happy to see that Veronica has arrived. Good, welcome.
Apologies for being late. I'm really sorry.
Well, happy you're here, just in time.
Managed.
So we will then kick off with Veronica already.
Yes.
You're next in line. So if we could have the second presentation, please, and I will hand over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Irene. It's a pleasure to be with you. Thomas here. My name is Veronica Manfredi. Since a bit less than 2 years, I'm leading the department in charge with quality of life in DG Environment. And under this beautiful name, actually, we are at the lead of fighting pollution. We are indeed in charge with securing that citizens get, which they still don't get everywhere, clean air, clean water, are protected from industrial emissions, protected from industrial accidents. As you can imagine, a new era has started for all of us after the President-elect Ursula von der Leyen has been very clear in putting the European Green Deal on top of her political priorities. And if I were to say one thing that in my view characterizes really the velvet revolution, maybe not even so velvet one that she's introduced, is that she has said something that the science and the research has been telling us for a long time, but maybe for the first time recognized politically, notably that we have to fight together the climate crisis, the ecological crisis, and that we want to have at the same time a healthy planet for healthy people. To put it bluntly, as I'm saying sometimes to colleagues when we continue for merely administrative reasons to have a slightly different narrative when we talk about climate issues and environmental issues, I repeat all the time, imagine if we were able to decarbonize completely our economy and still our people would be dying out of lung cancers or other cardiovascular diseases because they are breathing NOx from cars still in the street, notably diesel cars in particular, or getting other sources of diseases because our water is contaminated. So basically, fighting pollution and fighting climate change has to be seen as one part of the same and unique package, because both are drivers of the restoration of the entire ecosystem, so our nature, our natural environment, which is key to secure carbon sinking. When Irene invited me to this meeting today, I said to myself, oh my God, what are actually today the key priorities? If I would have a magic wand and meet again Leonardo da Vinci in person, that being Italian myself, I consider one of the greatest scientists who has ever been on this earth, but there are many, many others, of course. But if I would have Leonardo da Vinci in front of me, I would have the possibility to ask him, do me a favor, invent these 3 new things. Where would I start with? And I must say, it is not easy to come up with just these 3 points, but first of all, I'm really dreaming of a truly clean transport. You might have noticed that very correctly, again, our president-elect has put the spot, amongst others, on maritime transport and aviation. These 2 modes of transport are the ones for which we have less regulatory tools at this stage, because we have always been attempting to get them through global agreement via ICAO and International Maritime Organization. But it's a fact that today, also from a scientific viewpoint, we are still not there in having truly functioning new fuels, new modalities of functioning of this super important transport modality. So can we invent something that is truly, truly clean, efficient, to completely clean our transport, and how to accelerate, of course, at the same time, the cleaning of our road transportation, where we have more developments, more tools, more solutions, but, some challenges are still there. Second point I would dream of, I'm in charge with rivers, I'm in charge with lakes. And you know what still contaminates very much? Roughly 60% of our rivers and lakes, chemicals. And certain type in particular, particularly, as we call them, ubiquitous, bioaccumulative, persisting chemicals. I'll just name one among all, and maybe it's not the best chosen one, because it's mercury, a substance that we have already, by international agreement, largely abolished for production across the EU. So it's fair to say it will take some time, but maybe one day we will no longer see it. But even on this, scientifically, we have a big question mark, because mercury, like other very dangerous substances, accumulates in the algae, in the fishes. So we are eating it with the fish we consume. Could we magically get rid of it? And the third dream that I have relates to making agriculture truly sustainable. You know the eternal story. A lot of the pollution-related problems come from pesticides, come from some of which unfortunately even contain endocrine disruptor, come from certain type of fertilizers. What do we miss to accelerate the production of much less polluting instruments, tools to still produce organically, more sustainably, and type of fruits and vegetables that we would all be very, very happy to eat without any hesitation? The challenges are there. I think we have a very interesting 5 years ahead with the new president. Among the various priorities, she has put one to which I attach a lot of importance, which is called From Farm to Fork, which will call on board also consumers. In a previous life, I was in charge with consumers, and I continue to believe that people who drive the demand also naturally will drive changes in production, and therefore in channeling right priorities in research. Circular economy, super important, because the name of the game will be resource efficiency, how we can really transform what are today challenges into opportunities for growth for our industry, develop an industry that is much more innovative. But a lot of the keys to this solution are indeed in the minds of the next Leonardo da Vinci, or maybe slightly less big than that genius, but still each of you with your brains, with your capacity in your areas of activities, being the helpers of a different future that we want for Europe. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Veronica.
Thank you.
For these inspiring thoughts. We will then hand over to Thomas.
Yes, of
so
course.
So if we could have the third slide set, maybe?
I'll do this just orally, yes.
You work without
because
slides.
I was,
okay, brilliant. So maybe before you start, I forgot to say that we are web streamed. And those of you who do not want to be seen should sit in the back row where it's dark. The seats are already taken, I think, there, but just so that you are aware. Thomas.
Thank you. I thought my job here should be to trigger the discussion. And in order to do that, I'd like to invite you to do a little journey with me, bringing to our minds how health-driven Europeans' environment policy has really been. And if we take the most successful piece of environment policy globally is the Montreal Protocol to protect the ozone layer, even this phenomenon, to combat this phenomenon, was triggered by the fear that without the ozone shield, we just would receive too much of ultraviolet radiation. So the biggest environment success worldwide and in Europe already was triggered by a health issue. When it comes to chemicals policy, and Veronica mentioned the example of Mercury, I think we in Europe, and this is internationally acknowledged, have by far the best system in assessing hazards of chemicals and exposure and therefore risk assessment. But in these years when we were negotiating the REACH system, the real game changer was when the then Environment Commissioner Margot Wallström entered the discussion with the findings of several dozen synthetic chemicals found in her blood, in her breast milk, and in the blood of the children. So here again, it was a health trigger which led to an environmental legislation. And the situation we are facing now is scientific connections and boundaries are getting more and more complex. If you just take the ozone example, it is one thing to find that chlorinated fluorocarbons are destroying ozone. It's another thing that we should avoid contaminants in our blood. But when it comes to complex phenomena like endocrine disruption, Theo Colburn detected this phenomenon in 1995, and these phenomena are taking place in an order of magnitude which is 1 drop of gin in 600 wagons. It's a very light gin tonic, you can imagine. But this is the order of magnitude. And in understanding because phenomena like endocrine disruption is one thing, but then design adequate test methods, giving you the real information, and politically negotiate criteria, what makes a chemical an endocrine disruptor, and then putting this set of criteria based on toxicologically sound tests OECD-wide took us from 95 to 2018. And now imagine phenomena like epigenetics, the area where we are just about to start to understand how our bodies interact with the environment, how phenomena like endocrine disruption or other noxious do interact with our DNA. They shape the pattern to which DNA is actually expressed. And we've recently found that such patterns could be even transferred through generations. And imagine to transform such a scientific phenomenon into chemicals legislation. And so I think the European Commission very, very rightly came to the conclusion that we have to establish this science policy interface into a much more structured manner. We have to establish a structure which is funneling scientific findings into the political arena. And this is where we would very much appreciate your thoughts. If you could share your ideas how such a partnership, as we call it in the environment, in the political arena, should be shaped. What do you think is the kind of information that should be digested there? Do you have an idea of a possible structure? On the global arena, there's a very interesting development that on the UN level, we will possibly have next year an equivalent to the Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change for the chemicals area. So there is an internationally global trend to give this science policy interface more than an abstract meaning. We should crystallize it as a funnel transforming scientific findings and funneling them into the political arena. I know this is hard for scientists, but we also have to find a structure where we can steer research in a limited extent in a certain direction. We are desperately needing scientific results, which might be not that attractive for the scientific community, but which are absolutely necessary to steer and to guide the political arena. And this is also a hope we are setting into this new element in Horizon Europe, that there will be room and space and resources to stimulate scientists to answer questions which are needed to give informed political decisions and therefore informed legislative instruments. So together with Veronica and Irene, I think we set the scene. And now I'd like to open the floor for your reactions. And the more you can give us your impression about how do you think can we maximize the impact of the European Research Programme for environment and health policy, the more grateful we would be. And if you would start your intervention by just saying a few words about your background, it would be perfect.
So I will now throw it.
That's nice.
Throw it over here then. Okay.
Professor Ruth Schmidt.
I'm not professor. My name is Ruth Schmid, and I'm from SINTEF. I'm Vice President Marketing there, but I'm mostly here as the new chair of the European Technology Platform in Nanomedicine. So what I think is important, because you said that we have been health-driven. First, we get the problem, and then we solve it. I think we should change to be more foresight-driven. We should include problems like plastics, microplastics, nanoplastics, before we get the health problem. Or nanotechnology, we do already a lot, but I think it is important to get this good cooperation between the new sciences and the industries to be ahead of the problem.
Would that mean that your proposal is to make it mandatory to have environmental and health impact as part of product and substance development?
I think it should always be a very important thing, because we should look much more along the whole value chain of something new we develop, both the technology and the technology uptake in industry, in products. It should be it should be included, yes.
Such demands are often then answered by, this is an obstacle to innovation. If you integrate environmental and health impact research into product development. Do you agree?
I don't know. I think for me it's not, but I'm always thinking applied research more than I think we need this total black swan disruptive research. But as soon as some of those ideas go further on into the applied area, we have to think about it.
Super.
And include it.
Thank you. How do you plan it? Do you have to throw it at me?
We have several on this side, so maybe you throw it back to me. And
Yep.
I will throw it. Yep. Okay, you
But don't throw the microphone.
Okay. Well, my name is Werner Brack. I'm from Helmholtz Center for Environmental Research, UFZ in Leipzig, Germany. I coordinated one of these bigger EU projects now, Solutions, which just finished. I don't know whether some of you might have heard from it. I think one of the, well, I'm just taking up what you started to say, Thomas. And I think one of the key questions from my side is to get a more holistic approach on chemical contamination. So we are still doing one by one chemical, but what we have are complex mixtures which are acting together and so on. I think we need the tools to monitor that properly and to assess that properly, also to consider both human and ecosystem effects of these mixtures, and having also more, let's say, feedback between chemical regulation, chemical legislation, and what we find in monitoring, because obviously there is risk assessment, otherwise the products would be not on the market, but we still find them at concentrations in the environment which are not safe. So this link, I think, needs to be strengthened a bit, and I think we also should consider more, toxicological endpoints there. We do not have in there yet. So neurotoxicity, for example, is one of the key questions, but we have much more. So I think we need this a bit more globally, a bit more holistically, and I think that's also the research need I see there.
Veronica wants to come in?
I just wanted to react very briefly because I'm very grateful to the question raised in the framework of the zero pollution ambition, as in the broader context of the European Green Deal. We will be coming up in this mandate also with a new approach on chemicals that is precisely looking at what you're saying, amongst other mixtures, because we have been realizing also from our point of view of observation of the state of nature that these mixtures are creating new problems for the ecosystems as such, but potentially also in human bodies. And that's why the colleagues in RTD knows very well, and also in DG Santé, DG Health, we're always pushing as DG Environment to have better human biomonitoring as well. Because these implications between mixtures, impacts on human health, impact on ecosystems, have some areas of grey zone. So in the approach that the Commission will come forward with in the framework of the zero pollution ambition, you will see that there will be hooks and space for boosting further the research in this area. So very grateful that you raise it.
By the way, we have this human biomonitoring initiative in Europe, which also should be kind of role model for this upcoming partnership, hopefully. And this project has taken on board a mixture module so that we are in the near future also monitor in a European-wide scale in a harmonized manner. Also, we are starting to monitor also specific mixtures. But I see... okay, you already... Yeah. Okay.
In the far back.
Yes, please.
No?
Yes.
Yep.
Just the question is why include all the costs in the product. I am speaking about organic food, for instance, and comparing with no organic food, with pesticides, with pollution, with no healthy activities. At the end, for the customers, the organic food is not cheaper, but the total costs are less than the other. Why don't include? Why, when will we include all the total costs? At the end, the society spend all the costs.
It is a hard thing to tackle, but yesterday we already had the first workshop for this future partnership, and there, of course, we always had in mind that actions of lifestyle, nutrition, agriculture, and also inclusion. What part of the society has access to healthy food? These are all aspects which we should have in mind. But of course, we can't solve anything with one tool. Veronica?
I just wanted to complement with the treaty, actually, that tells us that the basic principle that the polluter should pay. the polluter pays principle, so which is unfortunately one of the principles which is least well implemented across the EU. And I think also the European Commission has to assume its own part of responsibility for the not particularly successful implementation of it. But if you apply that to the farming sector, personally, and really I express a very personal view, it always opens up to me the question, shouldn't we somehow let farmers pay a part of the pollution they provoke if they continue using certain pesticides, but not alone? I think that the distribution chain has a very important role to play. Because if you are serious into driving the consumption, the production, and thus the consumption towards healthier styles, I think there is scope for getting the distribution chain into the bucket, so to say, of those who pay for getting actually better, more sustainable products. Otherwise, payment for continuing to pollute. I mean, it's just a bit of a wild idea, but I hope you get what I mean. I think there is indeed a very fair question about the distribution of costs.
This is an interesting topic, integrating the polluter pays principle into science policy, because to a certain extent, if we develop new test methods, also for risk assessment, we are doing part of the industry's job. They should care for safe products, because if you have any idea integrating industry and polluters into the science arena, we would be happy to take it on board. Yes, please.
When talking about science to policy transfer, I want to raise the aspect trust. I think that's very important. And when I'm speaking about my own experiences in the science to policy interface, I think that the human biomonitoring can really help to that, because you bring environmental aspects to an individual level, and you're showing that you care as a government, but you have to do that in a trusty atmosphere. Trust within all the stakeholders which are there, and that's the people, the society, the government, the industries, the scientists. And when you work together on the basis on results of that monitoring, you can really go to concrete policy actions together in a cooperation way. I think trust is one of the most important aspects when you go to science, from science to policy.
When you talk about trust, this implies also a very open communication policy.
Open communication,
right?
yes, yeah. From the start. So people trust you as a government, and they trust the results.
This is something which also, I think, addresses the political arena. I have the experience in the Environment Ministry that it's very hard to actively communicate about the risk from chemicals. This is something politicians don't like to deal with. Complicated names. The press conference, it's a nightmare for them. Yeah? Yes, please.
Aude Lapran from an NGO that is called Science Citoyenne. It seems that you are very concerned about pollution. A big part of the pollution comes from industrial production. So my question is how to get independent research when now in Horizon Europe we have a mixing between global challenges and industrial competitiveness. This mix could be not so good for independent research that is especially important concerning the sanitary aspect, sanitary study of pollution and so on. And my other point that trust is important, communication is important, but I think that now we are in a time where citizens want to participate, really participate. And what is the place for participatory research and for citizen participation in agenda setting, that we have some political statement, but I think that we need now some concrete action in order to really involve citizens into research.
Super. Thank you.
Okay. Do you want
yes, one more. Yes, please.
Alistair Leyland, representing the European Public Health Association. The focus has been on the important issues of pollution and harmful environments, but I think it's equally important we think about health-promoting environments, how to create them and how to ensure the benefits are seen by all members of society so that they will reduce health inequalities.
Let me just give one reflection to the competitiveness issue, and this brings me again to the REACH history. There were some scaremongering studies saying when the EU is to implement REACH, it will cost in Germany alone 3.5 million jobs. And what we saw actually is that REACH established a global level playing field for at least for hazard identification of chemicals. If chemicals are traded between South Korea and Thailand, they comply with REACH, although REACH is a European legislation. This is one example where I think if we manage to implement such a piece of legislation in Europe, we are 500 million. Even after the Brexit, almost 500 million people, and have still 20% of the global economic power. So I think if we can make it there, it is a good chance to become a global standard. Yes, please.
Yes, I'm talking to the point of view of the Ministry of Health, and just to point out that intersectorial approach is important because health doesn't have in its portfolio the solutions, but health can be a contributor, to the new solutions that we want to invent. And just I wanted to put on the floor, I don't know if this is feasible, but on the new project, very, innovative new project on new materials or whatever, I think, at least Commission should think to have a healthware package or whatever, or health component into the project, just to make sure we monitor or we contribute upfront to any possible impact. And I think it should really make a big difference, because otherwise we will stay at the border monitoring health impact. So we have to anticipate.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for this input. Yes, please.
Tom Red from the Joint Programme Initiative for Healthy Seas and Productive Oceans. I wanted to ask you about your point on structured science policy dialogues. So we come from an ocean area and we're currently funding a project on emerging pollutants. But for us, we're very much targeting the Marine Strategy Framework Directive. It would be great if we were also able to look beyond that and think about the impacts of these pollutants in the sea on human health, so that we could then address further research questions that would be looking at that specifically. For us, it's very difficult to do that because we come from the marine side, and we have, I think in every area we create these silos, and I think it'd be really good in Horizon Europe that we sort of try and break down these silos to make sure that we're working across different sectors to work towards different goals. Thanks.
Yes,
I'm happy to take this on with me also because the Marine Strategy Framework Directive is in my remit of responsibilities. And we will be working together with the marine colleagues in charge and who are following your work towards also a zero pollution ambition. Let's face it, when I look at these pieces of law, the Marine Strategy Framework Directive, the Water Framework Directive, they give us a very accurate, more and more accurate picture of the status of our seas, of our oceans, of our rivers and lakes. The point is, what do we do? Now that we have such an accurate picture, and you're telling us in an always more detailed manner what the implications are for the ecosystem, what do we do? So that's why we're coming up now with this new political ambition to drive Europe towards a zero pollution ambition, but at the same time having a very ambitious biodiversity strategy. You know it better than me. Another big problem for the good implementation of that piece of law is the overexploitation of resources. So that one will figure prominently in the EU position ahead of the meeting in China next October 2020 for an ambitious biodiversity approach.
Also, we should, I don't have a microphone, now it works. We should remember that there is a mission on healthy oceans as well. So I think that's something to bear in mind, and I think there are a number of cross-cutting issues potentially for the missions. So I think these are really important to pick up at this stage while the mission, are still in the conception stage as well. So.
And I think I cannot think of any other natural element like oceans that so well incorporates all the challenges we want to tackle. Fantastic for carbon sinkage. Without the oceans, we will never manage, provided the oceans function well. It is the provider of every second oxygen breath each of us make. without functioning ecosystem resilient, we never get clean air. So it's fantastic also as a, I would say, iconic symbol of this 70% of our planet, the blue planet, that actually it's silently allowing us to be what we are.
Yes, please.
Yes. Dirk van der Stede van Vito, and at the same time also director of Water Europe. We heard a lot about water. What we miss in a broad sense is systemic approach. There's still too much silo thinking, and the effect of surface water that is important for transport, mobility on the one hand. It's also very often the irrigation water, but it's also the water that we need for the drinking water in the cities, which are moving to a self-supporting system. And we miss this systemic approach too often.
Where do you think, if I may ask you, does this systemic approach to be applied? In the calls, in the projects? Where do you think is the right place to ensure that the systemic approach is taken?
Well, the pilot projects very often are limited to technical aspects. And should be broader, should be the stakeholder involvement be guaranteed. So this living labs approach is a very important tool, in fact, to come to a broader view and having also the effects on things that we don't have in mind, which have been mentioned also before.
So at least a single specialized project should be embedded, if I take it right, in a systemic-oriented structure. Okay, thank you. Yes, please.
Kieran Tui from Fondazione Edward Mack in Italy. I'd just like to raise the concern that the nutrient composition of our foods is really important for establishing both the health and protecting consumer against harmful compounds in the food chain. But also it's very important to maybe provide some of the scientific evidence in support of systems like biological production or organic production, which may or may not be sustainable or may not be more healthy for the consumer. And tackle issues related to marketing, for example, low-fat foods that might have 10% sugar. So in the end, they're not very healthy for you. So how do we protect the consumer from these kind of issues?
Okay. Thank you. There's the cube. I know the cube is Sophie, but the micro is here. Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you. David Fenner is my name. I work for Saxony-Anhalt, so one of the German regions. And I was talking in advance of this particular workshop, I was talking to a number of institutes in the region. And one of the things, and actually it picks up on a few things that were mentioned here today, both the kind of holistic approach that's needed, the political dimension of what we're doing here, citizens' participation as well. And I'm thankful for the gentleman at the back as well who mentioned equality. Because, of course, environment, we've talked a lot about pollution and these kind of factors, but they do have an impact on individual people. So one thing we need to take into account as well is the kind of social dimension of all of these things, because that has a place-based dimension, which in turn also has an impact on behavioral aspects of things that were mentioned here as well. So that would be something very important to take into consideration as well. So the kind of socio-economic aspects of everything. Exactly, yeah, because of institutions, place-based elements. So.
Okay.
Maybe.
Thank you. It was a very complete picture. I think let's take 2 or 3 input and then ask our rapporteur to summarize. Yes, please.
My name is Sebastian Schönig from the Metropolitan Region, Frankfurt, Rhine-Main, and I'm very glad to hear about the health approach and putting the good quality of life into the center of the program. And I think actually cities can make a real difference when it comes to transfer and impact. And there may be one little wish, because if we talk about pollution, we always have chemicals or air pollution in mind. Please do not forget the issue of noise, which is very important for the quality of life, especially in cities.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you for bringing up that, to remind us that we do have also a mission on cities. Smart cities. So another aspect to make sure that the health aspects is well put in there as well.
May I just briefly react to some of the very interesting thought that came from the maybe later, as you wish,
no,
Thomas.
just the last input
yeah,
from the auditorium,
please,
and then I
please.
would have addressed you.
Sure.
Yes, please.
My name is Jonathan Lamprecht from the Swiss State Secretariat for Education, Research and Innovation. I have a question. I have a second big priority of the Commission is the digitization of Europe. And I think we talk a lot about digital opportunities for health, like how digital technology can be used to improve citizens' health. I think we should also think about the other way around, what implications, especially socioeconomic, social dimensions digitization has for health, and what impact it has on citizens, what it means for their social life and mental health as well.
Thanks. Veronica.
Just some quick reactions and without prejudice to the final conclusion at any rate. But just to say, on the one hand, to the colleague that just intervened, I brought the theme of noise up. To tell you that this is very much in our radar screens. Actually, if you read the mission letter to Vice President Timmermans, who will be in charge for steering the entire work on the European Green Deal, it mentions precisely also the fight to noise pollution. By the way, the second most important determinant of health problems across our citizens after air pollution. Second remark, social inequalities. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the report which has been published by the European Environment Agency a few months ago, pointing to the fact that unfortunately there is a correlation between exposure to pollution and social inequality. So those who suffer the most from pollution are precisely the most vulnerable parts of our population. So fighting pollution, and I don't want to focus only on pollution, for me it's about environmental degradation as such and climate change. It's also actually helping to contribute to restore a certain level of better social justice. Digital is, for me, a key enabler and accelerator of the transformation we want. At the same time, the digital industry per se has a rather important environmental footprint. We should not forget it. They just even keeping one of the major data centers, it takes a lot of energy, emits a lot of CO2. But what I want to tell you is that colleagues in DG Connect are working more and more intensely also on this kind of work strand. This is very much in the radar screen, I think, also of Vice President Margrethe Vestager. And I think, Vice President Timmermans and Mr. Vestager will have to work very closely in this mandate together. We certainly see this as an important strand work. And there was also a question that I liked very much about what can we do to protect consumers from what I would ultimately call misleading claims. You have to know that this is very strongly sanctioned and prohibited under European law. Both under general law, we have a piece of law which is called the Unfair Commercial Practices Directive that prohibits all sorts of misleading claims in industry, plus we have set specific rules for the food sector. But your question shows that maybe there is still scope for enforcing this better on the ground at national level. And here I know that a lot of work is going on, both in DG Justice, in DG Agri, to step up the activity of the Consumer Protection Authority. I've been some time ago also helping to make this better. There is always scope for doing more, but at least the laws are there, and we should also, as citizens, claim our rights as much as we can. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Irene, any more points from your side?
No, I think it's been very rewarding discussion here. A lot of food for thought, and I think that what really strikes me is sort of the interconnectivity between a lot of different areas. We talked about air, water, noise, food, digital, participatory, inclusive. It's a lot of, and I think we're moving into kind of a new arena of how we think about, addressing these aspects, that we cannot go the normal way in doing, we fund research in that way. We really need to lift ourselves on a much, much higher level and see how can we address these challenges. So your input is really, really valuable for us. Marina will try to summarize a little bit, and I hope that you all also will contribute to the open consultation. There is also an app for this event. I hope you have downloaded it, and you can also feed in comments on that one. So you have two different ways. And I hand over to Marina.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you also from my side. It was quite fruitful, and we touched a lot of issues. I want to repeat again about pollution problems and health issues, but I think we gave a lot of focus on how we can structure the relation between science and policy interface. We said many of you, you presented that the problems are more and more complex, and we have to bring closer the scientists and the policymakers, and the scientists, they have to understand that they have also to steer their research in order to reply in the real political demands and the real problems that the society faces. So this is one that we referred. Another issue, it is about anticipatory governance on the research, because so far we have the problem, and then we react, and then it's difficult to address the problems, the health risks. So adding anticipatory governance on the research is an important issue. For example, when we design products and integrating environmental impact assessment in the product development, and this is an issue that we have to solve without creating problem on innovation, which is another part of the research, of course. We said also that we have to follow a more holistic approach, and in our research, it's better. It's more important not to work on silos, especially the health problems are interrelated, and they receive impact from many sectors. So we have to work through an interdisciplinary approach. Important issue that you referred was about trust. How in this science and policy, again, interface, how we will build trust between science, governance, stakeholders, scientists, citizens. Ideas that refer open to communication, to actively communicating risk to citizens, and we have to help somehow to also to the politician to address this difficult and complex societal questions that they have to address. Another issues that we referred is about participatory research, which makes citizens active on research, and this is another way to get trust. And also to participate in real problems. Yes. More systemic approach on research, we said, and avoid silo-driven reaction. Pilot projects, a nice idea to be broader and to have, again, living labs and involving stakeholders on the design of the research. Another issue that one participant referred also to focus on socioeconomic aspect. These are very important. Of course, pollution and climate change brings health problems, but also brings inequalities, especially on vulnerable groups. So again, this is very important, and very important also to focus on behavior changes. Behavioral changes also on from the citizen sides. A lot of other issues that we referred, we focus also on chemicals. I don't know, I can go in more details. If I didn't refer on that, we will provide written feedback for all of what you contributed in this session. Yes.
Mm-hmm. I think that the time is up. Thank you very much, Veronica, Thomas, very much, and also to Marina for summarizing. But a particular thank you to all of you to being good sports and putting forward very constructive thoughts. As Marina said, it will all be brought forward. First of all, to the summary in the final session on Thursday, but there will also be written reports, so we take stock of everything that is being discussed. And I'm going to repeat again, please also provide your input in writing so that we really make sure that all these aspects are there. Thank you so much for participating, and have a continued good conference. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.